We're starting with Karen Lamothe. I wanted you to know she's a manager of the Government of Alberta supporting international education and intergovernmental relations. She has worked as a career development professional, promoting the value of post-secondary education and encouraging Albertans to plan for educational transitions through their career journey for more than 20 years. Her current role involves education abroad scholarship and grants programs that support learners and recent graduates in global competencies. And also Karen and I had the privilege of working together on the board. I'm Dorothy Ritz, that's my name. I'm the chair of the board of directors for Career Development Association of Alberta. Previously, Karen was on the board, and you see these wonderful colors and these wonderful designs on your postcards and your business cards that are available for you over at that session, and the mugs. Karen and I spent a lot of dinners at my house planning all this stuff and trying to figure it all out. So thanks to Karen for some really beautiful creative ideas for the Career Development Association. Also, Caleb, Nienkirchen, pardon me? Nienkirchen, is the International Program Officer with the Government of Alberta. He has a Master's in International Relations and has worked in the public service in all 3 levels for 8 years. Previously, Caleb worked for the Canadian Department of Foreign Affairs, Trade and Development. Currently, he develops and promotes education abroad opportunities in order to develop global competencies within Albertan students and to support the internationalization of Alberta's post-secondary system. So welcome.
So good morning. And it's,
I forgot you have to fill out your evaluation forms. I will be handing these out. Leave them on the table at the end of the session, sorry.
So I was telling Dorothy earlier that it's interesting because Todd Hirsch is a great segue into what we will be talking about this morning with global competencies. A little bit of history about why Caleb and I have gotten really into global competencies is we do operate, manage and oversee, and Caleb gets his elbows deep into it, scholarship programs for Albertan post-secondary students and high school students to travel abroad for study or work. And those programs we operate for some countries, for some consulates, like the China and the Czech. And we also, so we administer those. But our post-secondary system administers most of the other ones for us. So last year, through our grant programs, we sent approximately 850 students abroad, and we do that yearly. And approximately 150 students, post-secondary students, we bring inbound. And those will be undergraduate and graduate students for internships, and some in particular for specific research internships in the undergraduate level to help get them engaged in what Alberta is doing at the graduate research level and to engage them to come here and study. The funny thing is, the post-secondary institutions send more out on exchanges. They have a lot of opportunities. We actually are the ones that offer some scholarships to them through the Government of Alberta. But only on average, about 3% of our post-secondary students will have an international experience during their post-secondary. The U of A is a little bit higher. They're about 4.5 a year that students will have an international experience. And we do, the Alberta government, through advanced education, every 3 years we do a graduate outcomes survey of the students that graduated within that cohort that year. And we're able to connect with about 12,000 on average through this graduate outcomes survey. And they state during their post-secondary years, approximately 7% have an international experience. That includes work, study, or travel abroad. So the push is, and we're told, we need more. We need to get those numbers up. And so Caleb and I are going, okay, we need to get those numbers up. Why? And this is what is the impetus for us to really get into these global competencies. So why are we doing this? How do Albertans benefit from these students and these graduates that have global competencies? And then when we started getting into it more, it's like, well, what are these global competencies and how do we measure them? When we send them abroad, are we sure they're coming back with them? And what are the key ones we want them to actually garner and bring back, and how can they offer them to the Alberta industry, to employers, to help us economically, socially in Alberta? So that's a struggle. So those are a lot of questions. And of course, we also work in policy. So, you know, we have all these wonderful policy questions in our head, and measurement questions, etc. So this started us on this journey. So the first thing we had to do was define definition of a career. So anybody, give me a definition of career. Spoken like a true career development professional. So it's a sum total of your life experiences. That's your career. And so when we look at these travel abroad or go abroad experiences, you can develop your competencies through various experiences. So our programs offer various experiences. We try to get in work study and some travel in majority of them. And we can, we'll give you a URL at the end that you can look at and garner a little bit more information. So the next activity was to send you over here, and you guys already did that, so that's wonderful, and garner a little bit more information. So the next activity was to send you over here, and you guys already did that, so that's wonderful, on our map to look at the various countries that your last international experience was in. And it's amazing how many Albertans actually travel, work, study abroad. Looking at the columns, most of them were traveling. But that's okay. Usually at our age group, we're going there for travel. We've done work, we've done study, or we've come in, so it's nice to see that. So the agenda for today, and I don't have a clicker, I don't think I do. Oops. Yeah, next, Karen. Okay. Okay, so our agenda is, we've done the icebreaker, travel around. What is global competencies? Great, thank you. We're going to get into that. And what are intercultural competencies? And it was quite interesting because as we start looking at, they use global competencies, international competencies, and intercultural competencies. So there's a little bit of confusion or unclarity and still a lot of research around those three types of competencies. The next one is looking at why gain these, how to sell these, opportunities to gain global competencies, and a little bit of a discussion with you guys to get your feedback, your feelings, because for Caleb and I, this is really a starting point in evaluating our programs, how are we going to do it, and how are we going to support these students in selling these competencies back into the labor market after. So we've done this already, thank you so much. So unpacking the box. So defining global, international, and intercultural competencies, again, as I mentioned, the experts are actually unclear. And there's some agreement, and we'll give you the agreement statements or definitions that we were able to find in our research. Where and at what level are global competencies valuable? We define career, it's your life experiences. So what we found is, and as we know, if you're an employment specialist, you're helping clients or students articulate their experiences and state their accomplishments in a way that's appetizing for this employer to say, yeah, you're a good fit, this is what I want. you can support me in moving my business forward, they don't think in those terms. They don't think in our language of skills and competencies. So it's part of our job to help them understand that and be able to articulate those experiences and those competencies. Number 3 is assessing what global competencies you have and how to sell them. We look at those accomplishment statements and those terminologies, but also, do employers care? Do they care? Do they understand? So these are some of the questions we have, some of the issues as we move forward in unpacking how to measure global competencies for these youth that were traveling abroad, studying abroad, and working abroad. So as we went forward, there's global knowledge, there's intercultural competencies, and there's an application. So we found there's kind of the top one was the why. And that's what Todd Hirsch was talking about this morning. So it's the political aspects, it's the cultural aspects that help us understand the geopolitical environment. It's the geographical, where they're located, environmental, historical, and economical. And that's having that global knowledge, and Todd was wonderful this morning to really display that in plain language and make economics kind of exciting and fun. Intercultural competencies is that communication. It's that appropriateness of communication. It's that behavioral, in a way, to adjust your attitude to be appropriate and to be accurate with those individuals. And we'll get a little bit more into some definitions. And the last one is being able to change your behavior to actually apply this knowledge and these skills that you have. So it uses common language. It could be sign language sometimes. It could be English. It could be garnering another language and communicating in that. Cultural mediation, engages in global issues, adjusts behavior in order to do that appropriately, etc. So what are global competencies? Now, global competencies that Caleb and I are getting at, and the experts that we can garner from their definition, is a higher level than intercultural. And these are, again, as we said, a lack of consensus around the definition. But these 3 are the ones that put it in a nutshell, in a way. So there's not one. We can offer you 3, and that the experts more or less agree upon. So, it's that open-mindedness, actively seeking to understand cultural norms, expectations, leveraging gained knowledge to interact, communicate, and work effectively. Global readiness, a person able to grasp of global systems, global issues, how things are interrelated and interconnected in the world, and how society can best address these global issues. And I love this one because this is again what we've heard these last 2 days, is a skill to listen, observe, evaluate, analyze, interpret, and then relate. And actually, Darla Deerdorf is one of the experts in intercultural communication also. So what is intercultural competencies? And I'm sorry, I've got a lot up there, but in a nutshell, all of these 6, out of the 22 experts, 18 or 19 of them can agree on these as a definition of intercultural. And I do have a handout, and we will make this available for you guys, so that you can email us and we'll email it back, or I'll make sure Paula has it available on the website and you guys can go in and pull it down. So all of these definitions at the very the first 5 are all about appropriately and effectively communicate and have the right behaviors. So in essence, that's all it is appropriately, effectively communicate and behave in those other cultures. Accurate, appropriate. Those words over and over in these definitions, and I've underlined them over and over. And the bottom one is a good interpersonal skills exercised interculturally, appropriately, effectively. you know, communicate and have the right behaviors. So, a lot of knowledge though. And if anybody was in Gail's session yesterday, wow, you've got to understand these different cultures and understand the history behind them. Sometimes even the situation you're in, if it's political, what's happening, because you really have to be careful how to be appropriate and how to be effective at any given time. So why get them? I'm going to give that over to Kate.
Thanks very much. So I was thinking I would probably have to do a fair bit of context, but Todd took care of a lot of that this morning. What I wanted to share with you this morning is that there's a very good reasons why our students and our professionals need some of these skills. And so this section is a little bit on the context, some of the things that are impacting the province that reinforce the need to either acquire these or to update them a little bit. Maybe I'll adjust this as well. My director has a saying. He always tells us international is not a goal in and of itself. It's a tool to accomplish something that you couldn't otherwise do. And from a ministry perspective, from a government perspective, there's a number of things in this province that we can't accomplish with the people we have, with the knowledge we have. And so we are actively seeking partnerships and additional talent, skills from outside the province. So this gives you a little bit of a sense of the kinds of things where international is helping us as a province. Research and development, we're finding a lot of the ideas we're going to need going forward are actually outside the province, and we're trying to go out and get them. Trade, my colleagues who work in international intergovernmental relations are saying this is the most important part for the province. It's about selling our products somewhere else and about building a lot of those relationships. So that's a big part of the conversation you hear in the newspapers and around these days. Education, Karen mentioned a little bit about education this morning. There's a number of reasons why we want to have our students with international skills. One, we're having a lot of training talent issues here in the province. We either don't have enough people in the right industries or we don't have the right kinds of people with the right kinds of skills. So we're looking, a number of our institutions are looking abroad for those students. We want more of them here in the province. And of course, labor, our industry colleagues are always looking for more people. We heard about that yesterday as well. And so international is one of the ways that we're trying to address that as well. And I think just generally, the ministry's feeling is that we're going to need to be engaged internationally as a province going forward, or we're going to start losing some of our ground in the world. So. We heard a little bit about this yesterday in the keynote as well. There's some big movements shifting on the, sorry, I'm just gonna flip the page here. There's some big shifts underway about how we work. We heard that because information is so readily available in our world and in our economy, we're going to need to look at different ways of working, and the skills we're going to need are very different. It's no longer just about knowledge, it's about things like creativity, being able to work digitally, different ways of looking at things, different innovation. These kinds of skills are the ones that our employers are increasingly going to be looking for because we are connected to the global talent flows. We just wanted to give this little example for you. This was a study done recently, I think, Karen, is that correct? Yeah, it's about, so a lot of employers who work in STEM, so science and tech and engineering and mathematics, I believe. They try to assess the kinds of skills that their employees are going to need over the next 10 years. And the results are actually quite interesting because these are the kinds of challenges that they're facing. They believe that 50% of their employees are going to have to manage people from another country. That's just the way they're working now. If you understood the first part of the presentation this morning, 45% of people are going to need to understand what's happening in international markets to make sense of the kinds of decisions that they're making at home. So that's increasingly a problem for them. A number of institutions and companies have places overseas. They have branch campuses. They're going to be working with partners overseas. They need people in there to be able to function in that environment. Foreign language skills, increasingly important, particularly for an export market like ourselves. Foreign language is going to become increasingly important, and not just every language, but some of the important ones. Chinese, We probably don't have enough people who speak Chinese. Cultural sensitivity. We're an immigration country. Looking around the room, I can see that we have, and looking at this board as well, we have people from all over the planet coming to this province, and we're going to need those skills to be able to operate, just to live and work in our own communities. We're going to need the ability to engage interculturally. Do you have anything else you want to talk about on this one?
No, but it was number 4 out of the competencies that employers, 27% of employers, and they were HR professionals, $1 billion and over in revenue a year. And this was number 4 of the competencies that they were looking for. So it is coming more and more to the surface that they need global operating skills, global competencies.
So in our work, we work a lot with the other provinces and also with the federal government, and of course with post-secondary institutions across the country. Increasingly, there's awareness that our students need these skills, that there's good reasons why they should have them, but we're not doing a very good job in developing them. Karen mentioned a couple stats that only 7% of our students are getting some kind of international experience while in school. That's something we'd like to increase, and I think across the country we're seeing some consensus around that. Recently, I think this year, the federal government has tried to set a target both to double the number of incoming students and increase the number of going out. So it's becoming a new political priority, both for the province and for the country. Because this is being seen as a way of maintaining Canada and Alberta's economic edge. At the moment we're competitive, but we may not be very long. There's a lot of countries who are doing this better than us, and so this is something we're trying to improve. I think the AUCC is the, what's their? Association of Universities of Colleges of Canada, is that right? Yeah. Yeah, we work in too many acronyms. Very good, thanks. So they recently did a study of their, kind of a survey of their people, and they said about 27% of their institutions are confident they're doing a good job with this. So that's very low, 27%. 73% of our institutions aren't doing a very good job with this. And I bet if we ask students, they might feel differently as well. Are our schools preparing our students and our professionals for the world that's coming? The interconnected world, the globalized world, the technologically connected world. Are we doing a good job of this? That's the one.
Are you taking questions or thoughts?
I think we will, yeah, absolutely.
I just have thought about this, maybe other people are too, but obviously international isn't something you start at age 18, right? So
Actually, you started a lot earlier than that.
Yeah, that's a huge thing that you might start in kindergarten.
Absolutely.
French or whatever.
Absolutely. A lot of what we're trying to do at the post-secondary level relies on people who work at the K-12 level.
Yeah.
We need to start interacting with our students at a much younger age, especially if you're trying to learn a language. It's not easy, it takes a long time. I did immersion in French. On the other hand, we probably need immersion in a few other languages now. That's maybe, it's not important, but there are other ones that are also important. So absolutely. And I think that's why Karen and I are trying to reach out to some broader audience as well, because we need some assistance with that. But with that said, you can always learn a language. You know, you're never too old to learn a language, so.
And supposedly under the age of 30, you learn it faster than.
Supposedly under 30, you learn it faster. That's right.
So this is the second sentence on our Alberta International Framework of 2009, which we're about to revisit. Because 2009, as Todd Hirsch was saying, that's a while ago. It's kind of come back, but yet some of the outcomes and the goals within our framework are a little bit non-contemporary, and we need to address some of the policy issues still that weren't fully addressed in this piece of policy. But I just love the sentence. So much of what happens to and within Alberta happens because of events outside of it. Alberta trades with an increasingly diverse international market, and we need to encourage that we are positioned, ensure that we are positioned to see the emerging opportunities and challenges both within and beyond our borders. We've got to start with our youth, and we need them to understand as the world shrinks, we're not an island unto ourselves. So this is it just speaks to us why we need to do this.
I think the example of OPEC this morning brings this certainly home. There's lots of things that happen out there that impact our day-to-day lives, and we need to be aware of those. So I just wanted to give you a couple more snapshots of why this is important. This is a slide about immigration into the province. So we have the natural increase, which is kind of that blue number on the bottom, which has kind of stayed consistent. We have interprovincial migration, which you can see booms when the economy booms. And I won't say busts, but it slows down a little bit when the economy slows down. And this green section at the top is perhaps the most interesting part. This is immigration. Immigration into the country and immigration into the province. This is where Alberta is attracting probably 40,000 people a year are coming into the province from a very diverse set of backgrounds. And this will be a challenge for our institutions to handle, our industries to manage, and for the government as well. This is becoming a very cosmopolitan place. Even in times where recession kind of kicks in, not even recession, but slowdowns in economics, we're still seeing immigration. And this just gives you a snapshot of where they're coming from. The largest folks coming to Alberta these days are from the Philippines, from India, and from China. If we don't have connections with these countries, we're developing them. We're getting them whether we want them or not, so we should take advantage of them. The UK, one of our more traditional immigration markets, but also an increasingly diverse set of countries as well. Africa, increasingly, lots of parts of Asia. These are the kind of folks that are starting to come and make up our cities. So we feel that there's a real opportunity here to take advantage of some of these new connections and new relationships and new languages that we now have access to. Yeah.
I heard a stat that said that by 2050, the only population increase within Canada comes specifically from immigration. Nothing.
It's possible.
Is that
The national data would probably support that. We have a very low birth rate nationally. Alberta's a bit of an anomaly. I think we still have a fairly young population, and we do have a positive growth rate, I believe. But we do have a bit of a baby boom, comes kind of with the economy. But increasingly, most of the folks coming to the population increase is immigration. That's why it's still a very strong priority, both for the province and for the federal government. And the next slide, I think, illuminates that a little bit better as well.
Yeah, one thing also to mention is right now, this is why the K-12 system is struggling a little bit right now, because we've had a baby boom for the last decade in Alberta, because it's been good, and people are having more children. And what we see now is a pressure on the K-3 right now. And you can go onto the Alberta government website and you can pull these things down. And so there's a couple more years before it hits secondary education and post-secondary, but we're trying to brace for that. We're looking at schools where Calgary Board of Education had classrooms this last year, or this year right now, it's still going, I'm thinking post-secondary terms, where 70 classrooms a day went without a teacher. They could not hire enough substitute teachers. They could not get enough teachers into that system to have a teacher in every classroom every day. So that's kind of scary. You know, right now, is it slowing down? Yes, it's slowing down, but we don't know for how long. And it's interesting because Edmonton and Calgary and Red Deer, the cities are still growing, and you can see that through the housing starts, etc. when you start looking at the economics and all those lovely numbers.
They did not hire because of budget or because of lack of graduates, or what was the issue?
I think this just shows you the need for why we need them. I suspect budget is probably an issue. I'm not going to speak to that, but
The Calgary Board of Education was actually going to Manitoba, and now that Ontario did the 2-year after degree program, they're recruiting them from Manitoba, Ontario. They had a big hiring fair. My daughter just graduated with her second degree with an ED, and they said, "Come start now, January. Come." And she's like, "I can't I've got a job right now, I've got to finish, I can't pick up and leave. They were looking for certain sciences, of course. They were looking for fine arts. They were looking for teachers in certain areas that they didn't have those in their pool. You got to remember, in our post-secondary system, 1,200 students graduate from BEds at U of A. U of C is an after-degree program, it's only 260. Mount Royal is slowly coming on, there are about 60 grads coming this year. Down in Calgary, Ambrose has a couple graduates. So Calgary only has about 350 teacher graduates coming out of a BEd program a year. U of L is the one that has about 369, but most of those graduates are in Alberta, in Edmonton, and a couple of more around King's University, etc., that have BEd after-degree programs or BEd programs. We graduate 2,000 teachers a year in the province of Alberta, and we have approximately those many jobs available, and in certain specialties we're not graduating the right ones. And the teachers don't want to go necessarily where the jobs are, Fort McMurray, Prairie, Oyen. So when you're looking at that, there is this imbalance of teachers. But Calgary Board of Education was really hurting this year.
But I think it speaks to the difficulty of managing a growing population, a significant population.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've spent quite a bit of time reading articles about global competence or cosmopolitan education, where you send students to foreign countries and try to make sure that they learn some cultural aspects of it. But I'm not sure how successful was your case. What percentage of them actually learn something from the country? Do they learn a language and come back, or do they, segregate, live in a segregated place, right? Because by the time we're at that age, we already accumulated assumptions and biases, about others in foreign countries, and it's hard to shake that off. And I'm not sure even if they come back more worse, or they come back better understanding.
Can we hold off on 1 minute for that one? Karen, I'll talk about that in a second. The short answer is we're not quite sure. So hold on to that one. My very last slide, this goes with the immigration or inter-provincial migration. I just wanted to show you where the folks are coming from, and this may not be a surprise to any of you. They're coming from BC, Ontario, and Quebec predominantly. BC, Ontario, and Quebec lead the country in immigration. So not only we are having our own draw of immigrants to the province, we're actually gaining them from other places as well. We've heard a number of stories, even as recently as this week, and this creates problems for us as well, that a lot of people come into Toronto, they have family, they go to school there, but then they need a job, so they come to Alberta. So even folks that are coming into other parts of the province are being lured to the province, to our province. So those are also opportunities and reasons why we need to grow in this area. So I'm going to hand it back over to Karen here.
So the next part is how to sell them. And what I've done is Caleb and I are working with a working group from Athabasca U, Grant MacEwan, and UC. So these are international educators that have volunteered out of our massive group of 26 publicly funded post-secondaries to help us work on a program called Internationalization at Home. It's called I at Home. So if the students aren't able to go abroad, how can we internationalize the classroom better besides through curriculum? So we've now have 20 professors and lecturers putting in proposals to internationalize their classroom through partnership with another classroom in another lecturer professor somewhere else in another country. So, and this is in particular in science education, because science, the liberal arts, and the arts, they travel, they go abroad. Sciences tend not to. They get in, they go through, they're going to be a doctor, they're going to be a researcher, they're going to be a dentist, they're going to be an engineer. They tend to not think about internationalization at that point. So part of this, we thought, okay, now how are we going to measure this? So this is at home. This is really different because the post-secondaries, what they do is they do onboarding of their students that are going to study abroad or work abroad, and then they do debriefing when they come back. Because they will go into culture shock, they will have cultural adaptation issues, and so that's why they do the onboarding and the debriefing. And we still want to get those students to fill out some sort of survey of pre and post, of how they've grown or changed due to this international event experience. But we really have to measure this eye at home because it's a pilot. So what I've handed out to you is a survey that we're going to do online for all of these students that participate in a group project with students in another classroom somewhere else, or joint lectures with a professor, but it's usually going to end up with some sort of group project or project together that they have to work with their peers in another country in this eye at home internationalization within the classroom. So I want you to take just a couple of minutes. We've timed this, we've had a lot of guinea pigs. Our staff and our colleagues at work are saying, oh God, no, I don't want to do this again. As we've redone this lovely assessment tool, evaluation survey. If you can do 2 for if you strongly agree with that statement, thinking about your last international or your international travel work experience. 2 if you strongly agree, 1 if you agree, and 0 if you don't know or strongly don't agree or don't agree. And if you just want to take 10 minutes to do that, and on the back, it's actually where you count up those. So I'll let you just read the instructions and work through that. Just take your time, and we're going to see the results in 15 minutes.
Maybe also come back to the question we had earlier. We know something happens to these students when they are engaged internationally. We hear a lot of anecdotes. Had a great time. Actually, it doesn't matter what program or what country students go to, we always hear the same thing. I had a wonderful time, it changed my life, the beach was great. We hear that, you can put your own country in there, it doesn't matter, we always hear that. But that's not good enough to know if these things are actually happening for folks. And so we need to become a bit more sophisticated in terms of how we measure it, and that's where this tool comes from. So if we can be successful within this program, we'd like to roll it out across a lot of our other programs, because we really do need the data. We really need to know how many of these skills are being developed. So.
And this is part of helping the students articulate, because they know they've altered, it was a life-altering experience. How?
Are you finding portfolios coming back from people who exhibit and evidence of like different those kind of things forward to universities? Say like, I know when I did it last year and I had the orientation and then something would come back to me. One of the things I suggested was have a portfolio that come back, get these pictures.
Putting up their pictures, putting up their experiences digitally, and then going back and reliving those along their timeline. Yeah, so many of them are, but we're not seeing that. We're not getting that. So there's a couple of other things that we are here. And we took kind of the top 10. As you know, on any resume, you're selling about 25 skills. And in an interview, you may be highlighting only about 10, 5 to 10.
Pretty good, right? Pretty good.
It's reversed. You're working it right now.
That's right. And you could just work, and that would be fine. And if you had an international experience, that was gravy. That was bonus. Hopefully we're getting across the message that's increasingly less the case. You need these things. To be marketable, you need these things. Not surprising. Anybody else? Oh, sorry. Come right back there.
Well, I was just gonna say, I'm wondering
So those are a lot of the issues that Karen and I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Some experiences are better than others. That's probably not a surprise to you. If you can go for longer, it's wonderful. The problem is that a lot of people won't. So we need to find better ways of doing it quicker, which is hard. And I think this, not all of you did it, but the little column here on the door shows part of the issue. We go to travel, but we don't always go to work, and we don't always go to study. And I think you'll probably learn different things in those different environments. We'll just come right back. I think we have one. Did you still?
Yeah, just like as a immigrant, like I came here 13 years ago, and I come here and the culture, learn about the food culture, and I also work in Indian agencies, and they are also teaching the different cultural learning skills and multicultural practices of the learning process. And by working with them, I adapted their learning styles, their cultural styles, and also some new words. Also, I adapted them. Some new learning process all the time. Like also, I went back to the school and I started learning new stuff from there. It's always a learning. Never ends. As a way that can become lifelong.
It is a career, and you can do this in multiple times. And going back to the previous comment, there are things you're going to learn while you're working abroad that you won't be while you're studying abroad. One of the things that's very common is resume. International resumes are very different. You would never learn that in a kind of a study environment. You need it for a work environment. Yeah, Canadian versus an international resume, they're very different actually. A quick comment here, going right back there.
Yeah, there's a cultural educator named Milton Bennett who talked about expat syndrome. I used to be heavily involved in sending students on homestays from Japan to other countries, and we always used to warn them about not hanging around with just the other Japanese students because they end up having a Japanese experience in the vicinity of Canada.
That's right.
Or something along those lines. And so part of an orientation needs to be about, yes, it's important to have some friends from your own culture to support you, but you also need to be interacting with the culture that you've gone to visit. And so I think with travel, often that interaction doesn't happen so much, especially if you're on a package tour.
That's right.
And with working often, if you are working in a situation where there are a lot of other expats of similar culture to you, you end up kind of hanging around with them and don't actually interact with the culture very much.
So this is another policy issue for us, and one is diversity. So even our schools who are very good at being engaged internationally are putting all their eggs in a few baskets. And if you look around some of their campuses, a lot of their students are actually from one country. And it's now possible that their students can hang out with all their friends from back home at your campus and actually never meet a Canadian student. So an interesting problem to have. So come right back over here. Yeah?
So not so much in my generation, but my oldest son completed, so UC Business, completed a semester in Singapore, traveled extensively throughout the area, got on the local buses, so didn't do any of that organized travel, so South America. So his next venture is to do a master's in Spain, and again he will be adding to all of those skills. And then I had a sister-in-law who worked as a nurse in the Middle East, so you certainly get so much experience and such a wealth of culture and all of those.
Some people really get it, I think you can get a little addicted to it as well. You can get, people love to travel like myself. I'm a bit of a travel addict, so.
So on the second page here, as I was stating, or the third page, we brought it down to knowledge, skills, and attitudes. And in order for the youth to understand what skills they garnered, what knowledge they garnered, and what attitudes may have shifted. Now the behavioral point, will they act differently under having the knowledge and the skills, and the attitude shifts? We don't know. It's just the encounters that they will have if they're successful, effective, appropriate as they journey through. So this is just a little bit. If you have any comments on any of the questions that we've asked, because we had to bring it down. We did work with our data research analysts that do, there are guru experts in survey development, etc. And we will put it online for these students, but I wanted to have something just for you guys, so we just changed it a little bit so you can kind of count it up and see which area that you excelled in regards to your last international experience. So what specific skills do globally competent individuals have? So this is from NAFTA, NASA. And NASA is a acronym, NAFSA. That doesn't mean anything anymore. It's just the name of international educators.
Largest gathering of international educators
Conference on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's in Boston at the end of May. And so that's where most of our post-secondaries go, and many government individuals, etc. go. And these guys came up with this. So this is their list of globally competent individuals have. These are the ones that they have. And I love this one, sense of humor. And I'm always accused of not having a good sense of humor because my first language is German. I didn't learn English until I was 4 years old because I have a different sense of humor. Not that I don't have a sense of humor, I have a different sense of humor. So it's wonderful, resourcefulness and adaptability. And as you're stating about your son, most of the kids do YOLO travel. You only live once, so you do it like the locals. You go on a local bus, you do it whatever, you do it in hostels, and you meet people from all over the world. Do you merge into society? Yes and no, because they go to the nightclubs, they do all that fun stuff along the way, and we just sit at home and pray that they end up coming back in one piece. But this is how they travel. So they are garnering some of these interesting skills, especially resourcefulness and adaptability, I like to think.
And going back to this question we had earlier, I don't know that a lot of our students know they get these. How do you judge if your sense of humor is improved? And I think the only way that you know is by engaging with your family and friends when you come back and they say, oh, there's something different about you, but can you quantify that? Can you put it on the resume? How do you do that? And so these are the kinds of things that we hope that folks who are looking for work, who have work and want to move on, these are the kind of things that they're thinking about themselves and can then incorporate into their interviews and resumes.
So we're going to experiment by giving these to all the youth. Approximately 200 youth will participate, students in the Eye at Home, and we're going to start feeding this to them. So once they do their surveys, here's the skills, look at the ones, just like we do our clients when they can't do a resume for themselves or even express themselves appropriately in an interview by selling their skills. So once they do their surveys, here's the skills, look at the ones, just like we do our clients when they can't do a resume for themselves or even express themselves appropriately in an interview by selling their skills. And the next one is intercultural competencies, the top 10. Sorry, this is tiny. Caleb kept on saying, Karen, it's too tiny. I know. But I do have handouts also that you guys can grab of these, but I'll make it available. So it's self-awareness, multiple perspectives, open-mindedness, flexibility, empathy, adaptability. There it is again. Interpersonal skills, communication ability, curiosity. I love that because you're curious about other people. Why is it like this? Why is it different here? What's the history? What's the political environment? So it gets them to think and look and observe, and then respect. So with this, like how to sell them. So I have a daughter right now that's, she's at Nienkirchen University and she's doing sociology. And then she's now doing decided psychology is kind of more a forte. She's getting 4s, you know, in that area. Then she goes, but I want to work internationally. I'm like, what? Okay. So she goes, maybe I want to do nursing because I can take that internationally. Those are skills that I can, you know, they'll respect and I can go work maybe Saudi Arabia or you name it. I can work in different places that can transport me. So looking at that, definitely we're trying to let the students know that certain occupations are more open to international experiences on your resume and global competency. And so right now we're struggling a little bit with the teaching profession because we have 16 accredited Alberta schools internationally that do the Alberta curriculum, and they're desperate for Alberta trained teachers. So they're trained in the curriculum, they can come, they can pick it up, they want a contract, come for 2 years, but when they come back, even though if you're at the secondary level, you're an accredited school through the Alberta government, when they come back, the ATA is saying, yeah, okay, you got your certification years towards your ATA and your teaching certification, but the superintendents and the principals aren't that excited about hiring you. So it's a struggle to break back into the Alberta market once they've done these international experiences. So we're working with them right now. We're trying to work with Alberta Ed to show them that it's richer. They need teachers that have experience and they need new teachers. And some of the new teachers going out are like, do I have a mentor teacher there that knows the Alberta curriculum, that's been there for a while or taught here? So there's a lot of questions within their own occupation and their governing bodies. Nursing is a little bit more open, but again, some countries will not accept our nursing credentials and sometimes we won't accept other nursing credentials, but there is mobility within that occupation. Engineers, huge mobility within engineers. And we look at research scientists, business, finance, trade, government, huge, huge occupations and areas that there is a lot of international mobility. And for the most part, most of the governing, regulating, certification designation bodies for those occupations will recognize international experiences. Some of the major industries, so this is what we're telling students, occupation and then industries. So some of the, and you know what, just CPAs. Accounting now, because Philippines does CPAs, the US does CPAs, Canada's gone to the CPA Certified Public Accountant, versus we used to have 3, CMA, CGA, and CA. So we're more aligned now with the US and the Philippines, and many of the large accounting firms are international, multinational companies. So there's a lot of mobility there also, so accounting at the top. So banking, energy, natural resources, manufacturing, education and research. A lot of professors, as you know, travel internationally and do their stints. Telecommunications, government, NGOs, non-government organizations. We're looking at charities, etc., and construction. So in certain construction trades, structural steel iron workers, bridges, you name it, they'll go globally and they're accepted for their credentials to go there. So this is some of the stuff we're telling students. These are ones that do accept it. These are the ones that are the forerunners. If you're going to want to work internationally and then come home, this is something to consider. How to sell these competencies? Just like anything else, you need to be able to identify what they are and articulate them well and be able to do accomplishment statements in your interviews, but also check out what companies value those global competencies and are looking for that, because companies that are open to that, they grow, they're open to expanding, they're open to new ideas, innovation, creativity. So that's what we can tell them, but we're trying to help them to identify what those are and how to articulate them. Any suggestions? We welcome them.
I read an article recently that more girls than boys take advantage of travel study opportunities. I was wondering if you noticed that, or if that was any differences between the genders, or to encourage that's true.
I haven't seen anything that would be that clear. On the other hand, when the data we see is by program area, and so if you imagine that there aren't as many female students in STEM areas, those are predominantly male still, they don't travel, so they might not. A lot of arts programs do travel a lot, so there might be something there. I haven't seen it broken down by gender though, so.
And more males take certificate diploma programs.
The trades is another area.
And are technical or various, quick polytechnical in and out, and they're out in the workforce, so the higher male. And females are doing longer school, they're doing degrees and masters, etc. So they have the opportunity probably to keep.
It's a lot harder from our perspective to internationalize trades programs and STEM programs, science, tech. Science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Anything that falls under those categories, we nickname them STEM. And they're all the rage at the government these days. So you'll probably hear that term a lot, STEM.
Yeah, I read an article, I think it was
uptake definitely on the female side?
I believe it. I believe it anecdotally. I have some programs where only young women apply. So I don't know what's happening out there. I don't know all the reasons, but there's probably some truth to that. Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of the statistics are on the Alberta government's our ministry website, and it's called, in regards to where they are in school, what they're taking, it's called the CAPR, which is Campus Alberta
CAPR.
Planning Resource.
Yeah, the Campus Alberta Planning Resources is available on our ministry website.
CAPR.
There's a section there on international. They stuck us at the back.
Yeah.
That tells you how they view us as well.
79.
705 or something. We're right at the back.
Yeah, and if you go on to IAE, which is innovationadvanced.alberta.ca, and then just put in the search CAPR, C-A-P-R, it will take you right to it.
And certainly we can give you a card, and Karen and I are happy to share that with you. Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing is the graduate outcome survey is also on that. So the CAPR is about 99 pages every year. We put that up every year. And that planning resource is for post-secondary institutions to help plan their programs.
But what's nice about that document is we pull a lot of data from our colleagues in jobs, skills, labor, and talent, whatever they're called, JSTL, and international as well, education. So we pull a lot of kind of an economic and contextual data that helps students pick the programs that they want, but it's equally useful for folks who are trying to pick a career as well. So.
And it's neat because it tells the transitions in the different regions of Alberta from high school to post-secondary and the completion rates. Yeah, so a lot of information.
That's a great data there.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Any other?
I think, Karen, correct me if I'm wrong, but the website is on this document as well?
I'm just gonna get that.
Yeah.
Just a comment. I think, or maybe it could be a question. Since we have almost every country around the world have people from that country here, I think we can learn locally, right? If we interact with people, from different countries, in different walks of life, it's a matter of are we open to accept the different, right? I'm guilty of not visiting any Aboriginal areas, right? Interact with the community. I think we can start at home before we internationalize our understanding of other cultures. Right? Instead of going, maybe we can start at home. We can start at our schools, in the garden, by hiring people with diverse backgrounds. Right?
I'm gonna hold you there. We're gonna talk one-on-one.
Okay.
Because people are waiting for lunch, but I do have PowerPoints, my lovely admin support did, so you can help yourself to copies of the PowerPoint, and global international competencies, all the research that our lovely PhDs put together for us on our working group. And please fill out the evaluations, we appreciate
So
those.
thank you very much. We hope you found this helpful. Karen and I are happy to chat with you more if you're interested. There are a number of handouts here that Karen has, and we'll get out of here so you can eat. So.
And a thank you to Karen and Caleb. Very good cards.